Right, and good evening and welcome to Montague Island Books. And this is, I think it's our fifth edition tonight. And our guest author tonight lived in the Shropshire countryside with a tall, dark, handsome husband. I didn't say that, that's come from Amazon. She's got two gorgeous daughters, a Dalmatian, two cats, numerous rare breed chickens, and a black Labrador called Bo. I'm sure we'll find all about them later. And Bo is a name borrowed by her hero in For Heaven's Cakes. After working for years in a demanding job, she gave it up when her husband said, "Follow that dream." And she subsequently had 12 romances published for the US market and then turned to the dark side with her psychological thrillers. She got a 4-book deal through Boldwood Books, and her first in the series, Find Her Alive, was released in 2019, followed by Someone's There in February 2020. What She Saw was, or is, her latest release. I read that and I absolutely loved it. And it says here that she's head down currently editing book 4, but we know that book 4 is made and ready and it's issued on the 2nd of March. And just to give you an idea, it's called The X. And it says, sometimes your past just won't let go. As a heatwave grips the country, DS Jenna Morgan is called to a domestic incident at the home of a young family in Ironbridge. And I won't tell you anymore because it'll spoil it, but that's, and that comes out, as I say, on the 2nd of March. And our author is Diane Saxon. Hello, Diane. Did I get everything right?
You did indeed. I must update the Amazon if it still says that I'm writing that, because I'm actually writing my next book at the moment.
Great.
Into that one. So, but if I go to the start.
Well, first of all, if you want to introduce your guest, Katey.
I will. Katey is the daughter of my husband's partner at one time, and then boss, because my husband is a retired police officer and Katey's dad is a retired police officer. So that's the connection between us. Actually, Katey and I, although I met her when she was a babe in arms, I didn't really see very much of her, and we've kind of connected over the last couple of years. I use her dad as one of my specialist consultants. I will be using Katey at some point as a specialist consultant, and I have actually used her brother as well.
Wow!
That was in What She Saw. Pestered him because he's actually, what's he termed as, Katey?
He used to be an EMT. He's a paramedic, but he's been doing his degree in I can't remember the term, like a practitioner, emergency practitioner. Yeah.
So he's been very useful, especially in sort of ambulance scenes. Actually, it's for the X. It is sort of time rushes past, and you've got. So Katey's dad actually consulted on What She Saw to a great degree. We went out for coffee. That was in pre-COVID days. We went out for coffee, we chatted, and he inspired certain scenes and what have you, and really good for he's very precise as well. So
just what you need.
Yeah. And my poor husband is very long suffering, because he gets woken up with a jab of my elbow at 3 o'clock in the morning for me to say, oh, if you turn up on somebody's doorstep, have you got to have a warrant? Have you got to, can you walk me through it step by step? And so, but Katey's dad was more in the firearms unit specialist arena, which I needed.
Right.
For What She Saw, if you read that, you'll know that there's quite an intense part that involves firearms and that kind of thing. So
things,
he was brilliant for that, absolutely brilliant. So and then Katey's brother has helped me a lot, again with the X, because the very opening scenes is quite violent, and it requires paramedics, it requires air ambulance, and that was actually really useful because I had my husband, I had Katie's brother, and her dad as well, and I could consult all three, because you need to know each move that a police officer makes and a paramedic makes at that kind of really high-powered problem that
Intense.
and I don't want to talk too much about it, because obviously
no, that's it,
out in a couple of weeks' time, and I don't really want to do spoilers, but
no.
there is, you know, there's situations where they need to be really intense, and I think, I mean, one of my things going through life is that I've always done a lot of studying, so that's really important for me to have a massive background.
Research,
Katey has very kindly come along, and she can have a chat about herself now, but as I say, I saw a babe in arms years ago.
Wow.
And, well, you know, not that many years ago.
No.
We've kind of met up and really sort of got on so well, but I need to pick her brain at some point as well, because I will be using her for some storylines that I've got going on in my brain. So
great. So good evening, Katey. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Katey. I work as an independent sexual violence advisor in Telford and Shropshire. So I kind of look after children, young people and adults who have been through that horrendous crime, and go to court with them and look after them, all things like that.
Stressful job.
Stressful but rewarding as well. Yeah, it's frustrating with especially with COVID and the way the courts are at the moment. I mean, we were falling behind anyway, but now it seems like we're years and years behind now, so that's another bridge to cross. In my spare time, you'll find me probably reading more. That's all I do at the moment. I've always done it since I was little, but I think because of the lockdown, I'm doing it a lot more now. So, and then I'll review them, and I used to have an Instagram. I've come away from that. I've just started my own blog as well. So yeah, it's my main hobby.
Wonderful.
I live with my new husband, Aaron, and our cat, Salem, named after the famous Salem and Sabrina.
Brilliant. That's great. So new husband as well, even better.
Yeah,
so that's lovely.
Yeah.
So now, Diane, do you want to, before we start looking at the island and looking at what you're going to be taking with you, do you want to tell all of our viewers and listeners a little bit about, other than what I've just said and what we've discussed, a bit about your books and where they can get them and what formats are available in, etc.?
Sure. So as you said, I wrote 12 romances before I actually took my thriller to a publisher's. And what happened was I had been thinking of this thriller for all the time that I'd written the romances.
Wow.
There was already this vague sort of outline of a thriller, and there was this, you know, so it bubbled for years. But what happened was I had a foot operation. My husband said to me, I'd worked for this company, and it was TV production company out of Worcester, and they decided that they were going, and I had 2 young children, and I was traveling about an hour and a quarter each way to work, and juggling everything, and you know, reading a lot. You know, taking children to all their activities, as you do as a parent, and that's where you read. Actually, that's where you learn to read a lot. This company decided that they were going to move to Birmingham, and not just Birmingham but Digbeth, which was going to make it a 2-hour each way trip to work and back. And I already worked really hard. And I used to have to come home from work and log on at my home computer quite often at midnight, because kids to bed and done all the other things that I had to do. And then, one day I went to have a look at these offices in Birmingham, and it was a miserable day. And it was a November day, and I jumped on the train to come back home, and I got back to the train station, and my husband Andy was picking me up, and he said, "Oh, you're not happy, are you?" And I said, no, I'm really not happy at all. And he said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know, but I just don't want to do this anymore." And I was really, I had a really good job. I was the HR and office manager for this company. And it was a really good, high-powered job. And I just went, I don't want to do it anymore. And he said, "Well, don't."
Wow.
Hand in your notice. This was a Friday night. He said, "Hand in your notice." He said, "Go and write that book that you keep promising you're going to write.
Brilliant.
You can have a year." I went, "Oh, okay." So on the Monday, I put my notice in, and at Christmas, I left. And I messed around. And then I had to have a foot operation, and I had nothing to do but sit for 2 weeks with my leg up. And I wrote the book in 2 weeks.
Wow, 2 weeks.
And the trouble was, I had this thriller, and I didn't feel, I wasn't in the right state of mind to write a thriller. I wanted something light and fluffy. It wasn't actually as light and fluffy as you might think. None of my romances are actually light and fluffy. They're quite funny in a lot of parts, which actually even my thrillers have a funny element, a human element actually.
Yeah.
But my first book was called Loving Lydia, and it was about a woman who was trying to escape her past, which was quite horrific. And off she goes to America, and she gets off the plane at America, and there's a cowboy waiting for her. And the moment I met the cowboy actually dictated the whole of the rest of the book. And I just wrote it. It just flowed. And for 2 weeks, I wrote a 60,000 word book.
Wow.
And then I sat on it, and it was, my first book. It was my baby. I didn't know what to do with it. What if somebody rejected it? All of that angst that we all go through. And then suddenly, almost my year was up, and Andy said to me, "Well, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to send it away. And I sent it to, I think it was 4 publishers. And within 3 weeks, I had 2 offers.
Wow.
I was like, oh, well, this is great. So I accepted one of the offers, and it happened to be Liquid Silver, which at that point was one of the biggest ebook companies in the world. And so I felt very lucky with them, and I still had my thriller. And then they kept saying, "So what's your next book? What's your next book?" And I wrote 4 books in that first year and got them published, and so I kind of rolled on. But then there came a point at which I said, I really need to get this thriller out. I really need to get this thriller out. And it's now called Find Her Alive. It went through various different names while I was writing it. I actually originally called it, my working title was called The Gorge, because it was about the Iron Bridge Gorge. And the inspiration for that, I don't know whether you can actually, no, maybe not. She's here. Inspiration. I don't know whether, no. Screen's in the way. Too much. It's my dog.
Bo.
No, this one's Sky. So Sky is 11 now, and I used to walk her. We used to live fairly near Ironbridge, and I used to walk her 2 or 3 times a week over the Ironbridge Gorge. And one day I was walking over there, and it was getting quite dark. It'd gone dusky, and it was sort of late in autumn time, you know, September, October time, and all the leaves were blowing around, and Sky, you know, she's a Dalmatian, she was belting around, having the time of her life. And I was walking along, and I suddenly felt the hairs on the back of my neck going, and I thought, she's watching me. And I stopped, and Sky stopped at the same time. She was just snuffling around by then, so you could just hear, you know, and you could hear the acoustics over in Ironbridge are very special, and you could hear the people on the other side of the river talking, and it sort of comes up the gorge, and you can hear it. And I could vaguely hear voices down there, so it kind of makes you feel a little bit safe. But I knew somebody was watching me, and I looked up, and above me in the gorge was a herd of deer. And it's really funny because you've got a stag behind you on your wall as well, Jeff. A herd of deer. And it wasn't a stag, but it was the main female doe. And we looked at each other, and I was just absolutely amazed. And we all stood frozen. Now, I'm very lucky because I have a dog, Sky, that doesn't chase deer. She, you know, she just isn't, that's not what they're bred for. And she just stood by my side, and we all just stood frozen. And I don't know how, it felt like ages. I'm sure it was only a matter of a few seconds. But as I stood looking at her, this beautiful deer, we sort of contacted, we had eye contact. And as we had eye contact, the longer I stared at her, she disappeared into the background in her camouflage. And all I could see, and it was just amazing. And it was a very very special moment for me.
Definitely, yeah.
Sometime later, this is obviously sort of, you know, festered, if you like, in my mind. And I thought, what if that had been somebody? What if that had actually been a man watching me? But when you look up, because he's camouflaged, you can't see him.
No.
See me. And that's the basis for Find Her Alive, which is the first book in the series. And I wrote that book, and it did take me a while because I was still trying to write romances, and then I had to abandon them just for a while. I'm not saying I won't go back. I've actually got a half-written one, and I enjoy them. They're fun. Thrillers I find it a very different working process, because I find that you've got to do a lot of background, a lot more research. Well, I am a researcher anyway. You know, a lot of my working life has been doing research. So I love that. But you find that you do, you know, 10 hours of research for one sentence because you want to get it absolutely spot on right. And that's what I do. And that's why I use Katie's dad, and I'm going to use Katie, you know, and so on. So I wrote the book, and I sat and I went through it. And it is different because, and especially with these thrillers, that the format of them, and you've read What She Saw, they are a tight timeline. So everything is dated and timed, which obviously you don't need to do that with romances. And it's got to be precise. And I sent off my book to Boldwood Books, and I consider myself, you know, really hugely lucky both times. And I did really well with Liquid Silver, who are specifically for the US market. But I also then did really brilliantly well with Boldwood Books, because I'm a member of the RNA, which is the Romance Novelists Association. And on their Facebook page, somebody put up that Boldwood Books were opening their doors, and I believe it was something like the 1st of February 2019, and they were opening their doors. And I mean, the ladies ladies, I will say ladies, because it was started by ladies predominantly, they have the most fantastic reputations. You know, they come from really, really big backgrounds. And I looked and I researched them, and I thought, I want my book to be with them. I wanted to books. And I'd finished it at the Christmas time, and I was looking, well, you know, where am I going to send it? And I only sent it to Boldwood. That's the only place it went. And I just sent it out. And I think it's about 3 weeks after they opened their doors, I got a reply.
Wow.
Basically, I'd written to them and I'd said, you know, this is my book, here you are, but I intend it to be a series and I have 3 more planned. And they said, what's your plan? Wow. So I did. You know, I had them in my head and I had to get them quickly down on paper, and literally a bit of, you know, toing and froing, and I got a contract for 4 books, which was thrilling for me.
I imagine it was.
Probably the biggest thrill of my life, because, you know, I absolutely love my romances, but I think it's just a different, it was a different feel when I got Boldwood Books, and they are hugely, hugely supportive of their authors. Love them to bits, and again, you know, we've got fantastic book covers, and you know, it's also professional, and so that takes me on to the fact that I then carried on writing, obviously, and the contract was that 2 books a year. So that's fantastic. So and I've got the 4th book coming out on the 2nd of March, which is The X, which is brilliant. And now I'm writing, Boldwood have asked me to write a standalone. So a complete break from the series. And the theory on this is obviously the fans that follow the series will want another series book. It's great. And they're coming too. But sometimes when you've written book 4, when you get to book 5, people are going to go, oh, well, I haven't read those 4 books, so I better not start there. So they don't. But if you write a standalone, they'll read it and go, wow, I like this. I like this writing. Let me have the series. And that's quite often what happens. So that's why I'm looking, well, I am partway through. I have it all planned. I'm not a plotter, I'm a pantster.
Right.
Despite my timeline and all my research, it's all up here.
Wow.
So I start writing it, but quite often, like I said before, when I met my cowboy at the airport, and I didn't know he was going to be there. And he wrote the story of my first romance, and that's kind of how it happens with me. I get a character, and the character will actually carry my story through, and I've got my character, and I've got a couple of really good strong characters in this new book, this standalone, and it could be scarier than my so yeah, so that's where we're at.
Brilliant. So word of it, cheers, by the way, cheers. I'm on the soft stuff tonight, but cheers.
This is only tonic water because I'm a bit of a lightweight, and if I had gin in it, I'd fall over and go to sleep.
So where can people, obviously with the usual Amazon and what have you, but do you have your own website? Can people get sort of signed editions from you? You know, are you on Twitter and all the rest of it, or what was the best way to get hold of you?
I'm hugely lucky because my hubby is also an IT geek, and that's what he's living now that that he's retired from the force, and he does my website, and my website is dianesaxon.com. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook as Diane Saxon Author, on both of those, and I also do Instagram, but I struggle with Instagram.
I do.
It is. I find it's may I say this, very possibly a younger age group.
Yeah, I think it is.
Use it a lot, but a lot of book people use it. But I use it when I'm out and about and I'm not on my desktop. So I can quickly send an Instagram or do, something like that. So a lot of my stuff, I don't do sell on my Facebook or anything like that. My page, my website is totally dedicated to my books. And that's all about the books. But my Facebook page, if anybody's ever been on it, will be about my one-eyed cat, my epileptic Dalmatian, my Labrador who's got elbow dysplasia, my rescuing of mice, my rescuing of mice, and things like that. So, I actually love positivity. I'm a hugely positive person, and you will find that my Facebook page is just filled with positive, lovely things.
Positivity.
People have been saying during lockdown, we can't get out, we've not been able to get out, we love watching you out with your dogs. My dog's jumping in icy ponds and things like that, doing daft things. So I do a lot of little videoing and things like that, just to make people happy. And then every so often I go, oh, by the way, my book's coming out, did you know? So it's not a sale, use it as a pitch, it's not really a sales page, but it's where people can get to know me and mainly my animals. I have chickens in the house quite often. I know we're on lockdown, but I don't know whether you know, but also chickens are on lockdown because there's avian flu. So my poor chickens are in a compound which had been like a mud slurry because it's so rainy here. So there's me writing on Facebook about me having to barrow 3 tons of wood chip so that the chickens don't become ducks. And it's things like that I put on my Facebook page. So it's entertainment, nice positivity. One of the things that I found over the last couple of months more so is that a lot of people are asking me for signed books because they can't. I had a Waterstones signing, which obviously got cancelled. I had a festival at Bristol, the crime festival at Bristol. So all of those things have been cancelled. But it's not just from my point of view, it's from readers' point of view, because actually there's so many people who love a signed edition. And they come out specifically to Waterstones or WH Smith, or wherever you're doing anything like that, and they want your signed edition. That's why they're there. And I've suddenly found that people in the last few months have been going, oh, well, I haven't had a signed edition. I haven't been able to get out. So I've actually been posting out to people. So I've had, I have an online release party, which Katie will be coming to. So we're doing a special event where it's a ticketed event. It's a book. And I send a little bottle of Prosecco and some chocolates.
Very nice.
Got a sample here.
Whoa.
So it goes in a bag.
Oh, that's nice.
And then we have where's the Prosecco gone? That's the sample book so that I could get the weight of
right.
Chocolates.
Lovely.
Do that.
Nice little treat bag.
It's a treat bag, and it's a bit of fun because we can't get out and have an ease up. So, anybody who wants signed editions, I sent a few. I gifted a few over the last couple of weeks to people, and it's quite surprising because they've come back and gone, "Can I have the rest of your set?" And that's what some people. Yeah. Do want that, and then they say, well, I haven't actually read the book because I've read it on my Kindle, but I want the signed edition and I don't want to open it. And it's just so, that's thrilling. So I've had a lot of requests. I've sold.
So do they get them from your website or do they contact you on Facebook or Twitter?
Either or any. I am contactable. So on my website, dianesaxon.com, there's a contact page and people send me emails. Facebook, or people messenger me. I've had Instagram. I had a lady asking for the first two books for her sister's birthday, and she asked me what books had I got, and I told her the first two, and she said, could you send the first one? She really thinks they're great. She really wants these books. So I put in the book that she bought, and then I put in the second book as well, because
lovely.
What do you do? So, and she's just contacted me and asked me to send her the second two books, the third and fourth books. So there you go.
That's wonderful. So you can get them in paperback, get them in ebook or Kindle book or whatever you call them. Any audio books yet?
There are audio books. You can get them. You can play them on Spotify, which is amazing. This is only just a new sort of thing to me. That I think it's about a couple of months ago that Boldwood said, right, you're on Spotify now. So all the books are available on Spotify, apart from the X at the moment, but it will be once it's released. They're all available in large print, which means that a lot of the libraries buy the large print ones. They're all available in paperback and audio. There's a special offer at the moment, actually, with Kobo books. So if anybody has Kobo as opposed to Kindle, you can buy 3 of my books for £3.
Wow.
So yeah, that's literally a special offer at the end of the month. Yeah. But especially if you haven't got the series and you see that the X is coming out, you want the first 3, don't you?
Definitely.
£3. They're also, they were, Finder Alive was in the works last year, and they actually sent 7,000 copies and they sold out in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And after that we went into lockdown. So we're waiting for the next sort of tranche of stuff once their shops open their doors again. That'd be nice.
Get them doors open as soon as you can. That's great. So we would now discuss your books, and we've had a chat with you both. So we'll now get on to the important stuff, and we'll look at your trip to Montague Island, which is a fictional island off the Cumbria coast. If anybody has read Mike Craven's latest book, there's a lot of that is based on the. And that's how we come up with how I came up with the name. So as well as taking your own books and your luxury items and what have you, you will be taking an imaginary set of paperbacks of Mike Craven's books. So you've been asked to take 7 books with you. So first of all, Diane, what's your first book?
My first book will always be my favourite. It's The Princess Bride. And this book, I didn't read myself. My big sister, who's 6 years older than me, read it to me when I was 9 or 10. And a couple of things. This is what I would call my first romance. It is it's beautifully written, and it's a romance, and it was my first romance, but it's not a naughty romance, it's just pure romance, and it's beautifully written. And my sister used to sit on a Sunday afternoon and read it to me, and as she was
memory,
have to have any of the overly descriptive parts, but I don't think she did. I think nothing was. We loved it. We absolutely loved it. And it's always going to have a huge place in my heart because it was a special time for her and me, Sunday afternoon. We didn't have much. We had books. And she would read it to me. And it was such a magical book. And then it came out as a film. Years later, and I turned on the TV and there's this and I recognised it immediately, and I didn't see the opening titles, I didn't know, but I was straight into this film. The film is so close to the book in so many ways. They didn't spoil, in my opinion, they did, because quite often they do spoil books, don't they?
Yeah.
And I always think, read the book first before you.
Yeah.
So The Princess Bride to me was my first romance at the age of 9 or 10.
Wonderful. And you've never actually read the book, you've only had it read to you.
I read the book myself.
Oh,
And my sister bought the book for my youngest daughter a few years ago, and I thought I had it here, but she must have taken it.
Well, that's a lovely one.
But my sister bought it for my youngest daughter, and she's read it. So it's like, but I've never read it, but I've had it read to me. The first form of audio, I suppose.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, great. That's wonderful. So, Katey, what's your first book that you're taking with you?
It would have to be my ultimate favourite book, The Help by Catherine Stockett.
Oh, right.
When I think I was about 21, I was travelling in America for about a month. And in the afternoon, you get to go to the cinema and see afternoon matinees for like $3. So it was really cheap compared to the cinema here. And there was a film on called The Help, and it wasn't over in England yet. I'd never heard of it, had no idea what it was about. Went in to sit and watch it. I committed the cardinal sin of readers, so I saw the film first before reading the book. But that's it. Honestly, like, I fell in love with the film, bought the book straight away. And I think I've read it once every year since. I absolutely love it. Like, it's one of those books that if you're ever in a reading slump, or you're just kind of feeling, it's been a lifesaver in lockdown, because when your mood's been a bit down, you just read a book that you know. It's almost like a comfort blanket, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, absolute favourite book.
And was the what was there much difference between the film and the book?
I think the film did a really good job of the book. Now, I don't know if that's because I saw it first and then read the book, but there are a lot of films out there which miss out so much of the book, and this one's got all the fundamental bits of it. So I think it did a good job.
Great, good one. And what's your second book, Diane?
My second book is When the Lion Feeds by Wilbur Smith. And I'm going to show you this because just bring that I couldn't find everything that I wanted.
Oh, that is a big book. Yeah, I'll keep you going for a while.
That's actually 3 books, but that's 3 in 1. So When the Lion Feeds, again, I mean, all of these I've picked because they're an emotional attachment, if you like. So when I was 14, my dad had this book called When the Lion Feeds, and he had it, and I could see that he was reading it every evening. And he used to get in quite late from work, and so he probably sat down about 8 o'clock and he would read for an hour or so. It took forever. I kept seeing this book, and it was there, and it was lovely and shiny, and it was a hardback, and it was just, I wanted it. And it was, he spoke about it, and I'm very, very lucky because both my mum and my dad were passionate readers. They both loved books, absolutely loved them. And my dad mentioned a couple of things, you know, and we had lived in Africa when I was little. And my dad just loved Africa, you know. He was in the RAF and he was posted out there, and we had a lovely time in Africa, you know, great lifestyle, very bohemian, if you like. And he kept sort of mentioning, you know, it's Wilbur Smith, he's you know, he's written about Africa, that's where he's from, all of this. And so then I picked it up and I started reading it after he'd finished it. And apparently he went to my mum, and I'm 14 at the time, and that's quite a, I mean, even then that was a chunky book, you know, on its own. And he said to my mum, Diane's reading this book. I'm not sure it's appropriate. I'm not sure she should be reading it because actually there's a bit of sex in it. And I think that's what he was more worried about. And my poor long-suffering dad, I've got an older brother, 2 sisters, and my older brother had left home, so my poor dad was just on his own with a wife and 3 daughters. And he had to kind of cope with this, but he always deferred to my mum at these points. He went to my mum and said, you know, I'm really concerned. I don't think it's appropriate for her. And my mum said, if it's not, she'll put it down. Let her read it. And
Wow.
I fell in love with it, and I fell in love with Wilbur Smith, and I fell in love with his writing, and he's just so, he transports you to the world, and he can still do it, although he does have a ghostwriter now, so I'm not so keen on his later books, but I love, you know, most of his books. I absolutely just absorb. So that's Wilbur Smith.
Brilliant. And because you've actually lived in the country as well, you've got that extra connection, haven't you? You know, so
yeah, there is. And when we were going through, you know, when I was reading it, it just transports you to a whole different world. It really does.
Yeah. Brilliant. And what is your second book, Katey?
Memoirs of a Geisha by Arthur Golden.
Oh, it's a good one.
Yeah. I can't actually remember when I first read it. It was a long time ago. It's another one that I read every year. It's exactly the same as The Help. So I've got two books which I read religiously every year, and it's those two. But I absolutely love Japanese like fiction or anything based in Japan. That's that they murdered the film of that. The film wasn't very good at all. But the book is just brilliant. It's just the story of like a geisha from when she was born as a little girl, when she was picked essentially to be a geisha, the kind of trials and tribulations she had to go through. And it kind of ends in the Second World War era, the main story of her. And then she goes on when she's old to explain the story back. But yeah, I love it. It's, yeah.
One you can always say another comfort book.
Yeah, it's like Diane says, there's always like an emotional attachment to some of these books, isn't there? And they're two books that I could never lend to anybody either. I just couldn't give them to someone else to borrow. I just have to keep them in my house.
Yeah. Worst thing you can do, isn't it, with a favourite book is lend it out to somebody because you know you'll never get it back.
Yeah, either
no
that or the pages are bent.
Or a page will drop out or something. But lovely when you get the emotional attachment to the book as well. So we're now on to book number 3. So what are you taking with you, Diane?
This is probably one of the first audio books out, and do you know what? Delighted to find this. This is Under Milkwood. And it's read by Richard Burton.
Wow.
And Richard Burton just has the most voice. Under Milkwood it's Dylan Thomas, and it was one that I studied for A-level English literature. And it's funny because you always think that you're never going to like the books that you studied. Actually, there's been a couple of books that I've really liked. But Under Milkwood was just, you have to listen to it as opposed to read it. So this is, one of the original audio books out there. And I see it was actually £6.29. And that's back in, I'm going to show you because that is amazing.
Is it cassette or?
It's the cassette.
Wow.
1986. I had to do my A-levels at night school because I had to go to work.
That's a collector's item.
So I have got, and they are pristine too.
You can tell, yeah.
So beautiful. So it's Dylan Thomas and Richard Burton's voice. And you've got to listen to it because it's the rhythm and it's just this flow of speech, and it doesn't stop. It literally goes from the very beginning of the book all the way through, and it's just magnificent. And I love it. And I can't play it because I don't have it. But I am not giving it away to anybody.
I don't blame you. Have you read the book or just listened to it?
Sorry, I've never read the book. I've listened to that one because why would you read a book when Richard Burton can read it? Look at that.
Wow. You got your pencil with you.
Yes.
A lot of people. Katie's probably wondering what we're talking about.
I remember. when they used to get stuck in the tape players.
Yeah, that's it. That's a good one. That's brought back some memories seeing a tape. So,
Aw.
what's your third book, Katie?
So this is one I read in the first lockdown last year, so it's quite a new one. I had it on my shelf for quite a while, so it's one of those classic times. If you've bought a book, I absolutely love the look of the cover of it. It's Jojo Moyes, The Giver of Stars. I absolutely fell in love with this book when I read it. I don't know why I left it for so long, and I picked it up because I thought, I've got nothing else to read, I'll read this one, and I'm so glad that I did, because it was basically set in Kentucky. I think it's kind of late 19th century, I think. And it's basically a story of three really independent women who go on horseback, and they're part of Eleanor Roosevelt's, they deliver books to poor areas.
Right.
And the other women in society at that time looked a bit down upon them because they weren't like pristine and perfect. And it's just amazing. It's just such a really good story of independent women at that time, which is probably quite a different thing, really, isn't it, compared to now? So yeah.
Great.
One of those authors that transports you to the whole world. So she takes you into her world.
Yeah, there's not many authors that can do that, is there, that can actually, even take you to a country that you've never been to, but you feel like you have been just by reading the book. So that's great. So what is your fourth book, Diane?
Well, this is like a history lesson.
It's great, this, loving this.
I kind of have moved through my life, if you like, that there's sort of points at my life. Now this, and anybody who reads romance is going to say that they know this book, they know this author. She's no longer with us, but it's Kathleen Woodiwas, and she wrote Shana. Now this was my first real grown-up romance. Can you see how well read this book? And like Katie, I probably read this so many times. This is actually my sister's book. My sister is an enormous reader, Margaret. She's my biggest fan. She reads all my books. She edits them for me before I ever send them off. She's absolutely fabulous. And I got a great deal of my love of reading from her, because we used to, because she's 6 years older than me, she used to get Mills and Boon books. And I was only probably about 12 when I started to read them, because she used to have them, so I used to read them. But that was Mills and Boon book in the days when, there was a gentle kiss and the door would shut. Pregnant, and so it was those days of great innocence in those books, but really probably I was still too young to read them,
but you did.
Shana, when she came along, and Kathleen Woodiwas, if you don't know of her, she is renowned for being one of the first authors to really have romance scenes that weren't closed doors. And
is she American or British or
American? Kathleen Woodiwas, absolutely beautifully written. I love this book, and it is absolutely falling apart.
That is well worn.
Yellow pages. Beautiful. And I could read it again tomorrow and be just as happy. And it just transports you. And I think for years I used to read it and read it and read it, which is why it's like this. And my sister has read it and read it and read it. So and I had to wrest it from her hands. So
you can tell that book has been well loved. It's like clinging on to life, but it's been well loved, you can tell. But that's lovely. And what about you, Katie? What's your book number 4?
I'm keeping it local. I know it as Copycat because that's when I bought it, but is it Someone's There, the second one? Yeah, absolutely, it's my favorite one, so I absolutely love it. I just think the way that Diane's almost delved into the criminal's mind in that book is brilliant. Like it sends like chills up your spine.
I was weighing for that was the original cover, And
I'm proud to have that one. So I've got the original.
So
Original
did that
signed.
book have two different names then? Did it come? Did it get re-released or?
what happened was we did Find Her Alive, which was originally called The Keeper, and then Copycat. And then as What She Saw was going to come out, the publishers said to me, I think we might be hitting the wrong market with this kind of, it almost like looks like a horror. So they said, do you mind if we repackage it as What She Saw comes out? And they've actually done a beautiful job of the new covers as well. So I'm happy. Well, I've got all of them, obviously. And I've only got a few of these original Copycat left, which are, these are the ones that people have asked for, because, if I become rich and famous, these will be collector's items.
Definitely.
Yes, I love this one. And I wish this had a bit more recognition, because I find Her Alive really has taken off. And What She Saw. And then I always feel as though this one has, when I look at the reviews, I go, oh, you haven't got quite as many reviews as the other two. And I don't know why.
It's strange, isn't it?
I love it.
Yeah, strange.
So far. I love it.
I think it's very dark.
Yeah.
Katie, we've lost your voice. You've gone very quiet.
I think it's definitely my favourite so far.
Read the X, that might be your favourite.
Yeah, definitely. I've actually got the X to read on advanced reader copy through NetGalley. So I've got the book I'm reading now and then another book, and I've got to get that one read and reviewed before publication day. So I'm looking forward to that. So we'll now go on to book number 5. So what's your 5th one, Diane?
Oh, yes. 5th one, we moved along so fast then. Okay, this is one of my I couldn't decide, but I've got to mention her as an author. Now, again, this is an American author, because I think because we lived abroad a lot, we tended to get, because we were in the RAF, quite often you were with the American RAF as well. So we quite often got American books. And so growing up and then growing older, I kind of stuck to a lot of the American authors. And I think this lady is worth a mention. And I actually think, Katie, you would love this writer. Susan Elizabeth Phillips makes me hoot. She is one of the funniest writers. And I'm just going to read the first sentence of this book, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
It wasn't every day a guy saw a headless beaver marching down the side of the road, not even in Dean Robillard's larger-than-life world.
A headless beaver.
Down the road. And it's a woman in a beaver suit.
Hi. What's the author called again? Susan Elizabeth Phillips.
And I've read every single one of her books, and I absolutely think she's fantastic. I think she only puts out one book a year, something like that now. But she is just, her humour, and it's cruel, and it's and you find yourself, it's so funny, and then suddenly you're in tears. oh my god, no, you can't. She's got the most wicked lead ladies. Absolutely wicked, and sometimes they're not nice people, but they're always redeemable, and so she's really great laugh,
strong characters.
That is if you're stuck on your Cumbrian island in a woolly jumper and a cup of hot chocolate, that's the book to read.
So what was that her first book, or is that one of her more recent books? Or?
Well, it's one of her first books. I wouldn't like to say what her first book was. She'd already got that many out. Can you see that?
Oh wow! Yeah, busy lady.
This is years. When was that? 2008.
All right. So yeah.
2007 originally published. So, but I mean, every single one of her books, I've waited for them to be published, to read them, because she's just different. You know, she's a different style of writing. It is her own style of writing. She's wicked, she's cruel, she's, you know, and then so funny as well. Always a lovely ending.
Wonderful. Wonderful, that's nice, and just what you need on on the remote island. So what's your fifth book, Katie?
This book is The King's Witch by Tracy Borman.
Can you just say that again? Your volume's gone a little again.
The laptop. Fifth book is The King's Witch by Tracy Borman, and Tracy Borman's a historian. And the book is set in, I think, it's 17th century, so around the gunpowder plot. And it's all to do with like witchcraft and King James and how nasty he was to people. But it kind of crosses over, so you've got like witchcraft accusations crossing over with the gunpowder plot, and it's just amazing. It's the first one in a trilogy, and I haven't read the other two yet. Ooh. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
Oh, if that's one of your favourites, you're going to have to get the other two.
Yeah.
But books, Katie, one of my romances is actually witchcraft, and it's called Under the Full-Blooded Moon. So I've got all my rights back to my 12 romances, and I've decided I'm going to self-publish them. So that will be coming out within the next year again.
I want to read your romances anyway. I've been thinking to ask, especially if there's one about witchcraft.
That's great. So you've got an order in already, yeah?
I'm set.
So we're now on to book number 6. So what is your 6th book you're taking with you, Diane?
I haven't got a picture of this. Why? This is, and again, I was hard pushed because I love this author, and she really is more of my thriller genre, and it's Karen Slaughter, and the particular book I've chosen is called Cop Town, and I was actually driving to and from work, and again I listened to it on audio, but then I read it on Kindle as well. But the audiobook is really good because I don't know who they got to do the voiceover, but goodness me, it's really clipped and sharp. And when you read the book, and this is Karen Slaughter's style, she's very clipped when she writes. And my sister introduced me to her, not physically, but you know, to her books. And again, because she reads far more than I do, because I'm writing as well. But she reads so many books, and she said, you've got to read Karen Slaughter. And it was before Karen Slaughter was really over in Britain, you know, so it was when she first came out, and Margaret said to me, you've got to read Karen Slaughter. And I read her first 2 books, and then I sort of went, okay, she's really shocking. I mean, if you've read her books, her murder scenes are just really visual, and she's amazing, absolutely amazing. And I read the first 2 books, and then the 3rd book I sort of went, I need a break from her because I think it was really intense. And then I started reading her again, and then I started reading her again, and then you suddenly go, I really get this. I really get this. And what I've done lately, if I'm on a deadline for a book, I still like to read. So I'm always reading. So when I go to bed at night, I try and read 2 or 3 chapters. These days, I seem to go, but you know, I always read at least a chapter, maybe 2 at night before I go to sleep. If it's a really good book, I'm up at 3, still reading it. But when I'm on a deadline, I've got to just not get too absorbed into a book. Otherwise, you know, I'm lost. And Karen Slaughter produces some great short stories, and you can pick them up, you can read them in like 2 hours, and you're done, and you know that you're safe, and you've got a whole full descriptive brilliant story. Cop Town is just a wonderful, it's full of everything that it shouldn't, you know, that is not right in the world. And it's a very cruel story, and it's very clever, and it's very clipped the way she writes, and it's one of those ones that you think of quite frequently afterwards, you know, and you go, oh, listen to that again.
That's great. Have you, just while we're on the subject, have you ever written any short stories?
I've got 2 short stories. When I first joined Liquid Silver as a publisher, I kind of missed this out, but it is quite funny. They said to me, yes, we love your book. And then they said, can you rewrite it completely?
Wow.
And I sort of went, oh. And I had to rewrite it for 2 reasons. One, I did head hopping, which is not allowed in this day and age, which is when you flick from one character to the next character in the same scene. You can use your point of view, but you tend to have a chapter dedicated to each character change.
Yeah.
Whereas I was doing head hopping, which is something Nora Roberts does, but very, very successfully, and she's done it forever. So nobody's ever going to criticize her for that. I mean, she's the biggest selling author in the world. Anyway, so I kind of had head hopped, and they said, can't do any of that. And also, you've got to write it in American English.
Oh.
So I had to rewrite the whole book. But then after that, I wrote them in American English. And it's quite easy. Once you get the rhythm of it, it's quite easy. The short story, they said to me, would you like to do some online lessons with us? And it was Skype at that time. So I said, sorry, my dog's just having a cough. She's coughing away. So I said, yes, I'd love to. So we did 16 weeks, and I had to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning because it was American time. And so I was on Skype at 2 o'clock in the morning for a couple of hours doing this thing. And they said to us, right, we want you to go away and write us a scene. And the scene has to be sort of a woman arrives at an airport and she's on her way to see her in-laws. Take it from there.
So they gave you the scene and you had to write the book around it. That's a bit different, isn't it?
They only wanted the scene, so I wrote this scene. It was like practice. It was just, you know, let's see if you can do how you can do this. So I wrote this scene, and my editor wrote to me and she said, love that scene, write the book, but make it a short story. Oh, hello.
Hey.
So they said, write a short story and we'll get it out for Christmas. And so it's a Christmas short story called Flight of Their Life. And it's a very funny, it's just funny and lighthearted, and but also quite touching as well. So yeah, so I wrote that. And then the other short story I wrote is called Short Circuit Time. And that is actually a sci-fi. And it's the only sci-fi I've written, but I did a huge amount of research into wormholes and things like that. And I wrote that as a challenge. There were some that said, oh, let's have a challenge and we'll do that. And I wrote it, and my publisher went, wow, that's great, let's have it, let's publish it. So that was Short Circuit Time. Great. So then, but they tend to be, I think the short stories tend to be more humorous, if you like. It's a quick sort of dash in injection of a lot of humor.
Great.
Yeah,
that's interesting. That's really interesting. So I think that was your 6th book. So Katie, what's your book number 6?
I've chosen a book called Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It's quite a new one again. I think it came out a couple of years ago, maybe. It's so different in that it's written like an interview with a band. The whole book is like an interview with this band, and it's very like Fleetwood Mac vibe. So it's set in the 70s.
Lovely.
I've never read anything like it, but it just puts you there, and you can literally hear the music playing in your head while you're reading it. It's brilliant. Taylor Jenkins Reid's supposed to be quite a really good author as well. She's got quite a few books out that I need to try. They're releasing it as a TV program as well, and Elvis's granddaughter's playing the main character in it, so that'll be really good. Yeah,
I love it when you get a book and you could put a playlist with it.
Yeah.
Because
definitely
it gives you the time and everything, doesn't it? You know, and there are some authors that are now starting to, when you write a book, they're coming out with a playlist, like a Spotify playlist or whatever.
So, I think the author's done that for this book as well. So if you typed it in on Spotify, it comes up with a list of similar things.
That's good. It adds an extra dimension, doesn't it? So we're now on the final book that you've chosen to take with you onto Montague Island. So what's yours going to be, Diane?
I mentioned her before, and it's a Nora Roberts book, but it's actually her J.D. Robb ones. I don't know whether you've read them. Again, American. So that's
a nice cover.
It's a bit rubbed down now. This is another one you leaf through. Right, this is book 1 in her series. I think she's got 39. I may be wrong. She is so prolific, this lady, and such a brilliant author. As I said, I think she's the highest earning author in the world. I was going to have a look because I actually sent somebody something before. Bear with me just 1 second. I sent somebody this information about her before. And basically, Nora Roberts' net worth, she's an American author who's got a net worth of $390 million. She earns $20 million a year. And yet, do you know her? Have you? It's amazing. It's amazing that not that many people have actually heard of her in Britain. We were reading, again, sister introduced me to her as Nora Roberts, a prolific romance writer. She wrote her first romance when her husband had left her. She was alone in the house with 2 little boys in a snowstorm, and she was stuck and going mad. Probably a bit like people in COVID, actually. Isn't it? You know, can't go anywhere, can't do anything. And so many people have started to write, and she penned her first book. And then she spent years trying to get her books published, but she kept writing all the way. And then suddenly she got published. I think it might have been Harlequin or something like that. And she got her first publishing contract, and then they obviously said, "What else have you got?" And she just had the and so she pulled all the manuscripts out of her drawers, and that was when, you know, they were typewritten. Pulled all her manuscripts out of her drawers and sent them off, and she just writes prolifically. So she writes as Nora Roberts. She writes her romances as Nora Roberts, but a number of years ago. How many years ago? She started writing. She obviously wanted, a bit like me, or I'm a bit like her, if you like, decided that she wanted to go over to the dark side. So she started writing. And this is actually 2003, this edition, but it came out in 1995, a bit longer than I thought. And she decided that she was going to write crime, but it's futuristic, but it's not so futuristic that it's unbelievable. You know, it's just little twinks and things like cars fly, but it's all taken in its stride, and it's so natural. She's created this whole massive world, and I don't know whether she knew she was going to be this successful, but the moment you read that first book, and her books are about relationships. And I like to think when I'm writing that my books are about relationships. It's not just when you create, and you know, some people don't like this. I've had a couple of male readers particularly say, no, I just want to know the story. I just want to go from A to B to C to D and find out who did it. But actually, that's not how I write. I write the relationships. So you've got in book 1, Find Her Alive, you've got this relationship forming. And J.D. Robb writes, I wouldn't like to say I write like her because she's just amazing, but she writes about the heart of people. So she'll write those relationships and the developing relationships through the book, and she writes them so well, and her characters are beautiful. But she's got the most fantastic storylines. I don't know where she pulls, however many 30 odd, just keeps pulling them out, and they are really dark, some of these storylines. This one I don't think starts off as dark. It's kind of a gentle introduction to the dark side, if you like. But some of her latest books, they've got bigger and bigger and bigger. J.D. Robb there.
So would you say they're more like psychological thrillers?
Oh, definitely, yeah. They're definitely psychological thrillers. She. If I want to read something to sort of give me a bit of oomph to move on, so.
Great, I have to check her out. It sounds very interesting. But it's amazing when you say how much money she's made, and yet never heard of her.
Amazing.
Yeah, amazing. So great. So Katie, what's your book number 7?
I tried to pick books from different genres throughout this, so this was quite a new journey for me. I recently read it. It's in the fantasy genre, which at first I was just a bit like, I don't know about fantasy, I'm not sure. And then I read this, and I just want to read fantasy all the time now. You're writing a fantasy book? Brilliant.
I've written a couple of fantasy books.
I need to get your entire back catalogue, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
But this is called A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and it's the first one in a series, and the 5th one's just come out this week, I think.
I've seen
it's amazing, yeah.
I haven't read the others, so yes, I've got to go back.
So when's the book set, and is it like a different world, or is it?
Yeah, so you don't really know when it's set. I suppose it's quite like modern, but it's the human world and the fairy world, but the fairies have got different kingdoms, and it's not a children's book, it's definitely an adult book. But one of the humans crosses over into the fairy world because she committed a crime by accidentally killing a fairy. So they took her, rather than killing her there and then, they took her into the fairy world. And it's just her story of like her survival in the fairy kingdom, and relationships form with fairies and between humans. And some parts are quite violent as well. But I haven't read fantasy really. I suppose, I don't know if Harry Potter counts as fantasy. I suppose it does. Since then, and I loved them when I was little. So it's quite nice to find like your grown-up version of something you liked when you were little.
Yeah, that's great, and great to have that variety as well. So it'll definitely keep you busy while you're on the island. Well, thank you both for your book choices. They're all very, very different and very interesting.
So on the island together, Katie and I are. So we're going to swap books.
Yeah,
double.
That's it, definitely. So now we're getting on to something a little bit different, something out of the ordinary a little bit more. So a music CD, you get a chance now. You only get 1 hour of electricity a day, so you've got to be careful what you choose on your choices. But which CD or music CD or album would you take with you? First of all, you, Diane.
Well, actually, I'd have my old iPod because it holds loads of battery and we'd be fine for ages. But if I was pushed, it would have to be anything by Van Morrison.
Oh, wow. I'm a big Van Morrison fan.
I have this really old iPod and it holds 84 gigabyte, whatever it is. It's one of the biggest and it's one of the oldest type. And I love it. I still love it. And I've got all my tracks on there. And when we did go abroad, remember those days? And my daughters always come with us. or they did, they always end up taking my iPod off me because they love all the Van Morrison tracks, and they're what we call our holiday music. So if I'm going to be on an island, I don't care if it's hot or it's cold or it's whatever, Van Morrison, and particularly Brown Eyed Girl, because that's what we always sang to my eldest daughter, who's got the biggest, brownest eyes you've ever seen. And so it's a really special one. And he's just fantastic. And, you know, on a Sunday afternoon when there's nothing on the radio, you just want something good. I put Van Morrison on and just...
I totally agree with you, Brown Eyed Girl, and it's one of the, well, he says, I don't know if this is just hype, but he says it's the song that he likes singing least of all.
Oh,
now,
really?
whether that's because he just gets asked for it so much
all the time,
you know, so he just gets sick of singing it.
One of my books, one of my romances, I've actually got one of the heroine is doing a journey, and throughout the journey she's playing the different songs, so I've actually got them, you know, through that book. So you'll like that, please. Definitely. If I had to live with a single voice week on week, it would have to be him.
Great. And I think he's one of them kind of people that won't really get the recognition he deserves until sadly he's died.
I love him.
I do, but I just think that he's very underrated by a lot of people. But great choice, love that one. And what about you, Katie? What's your choice of CD?
I would have to take a Best of Eagles CD. I love the Eagles.
Choice. Yeah.
Yeah, get it off my mum and my husband as well. So yeah, we've been to see their tribute band Talon at the theatre a couple of times because I can't afford to go and see the real ones if they ever tour again. But I love him. Yeah, I think that's quite a good mix of music for the island there.
Yeah, and it's quite uplifting. Yeah, a bit of Van Morrison, a bit of the Eagles.
Yeah,
you can even have a bit of a dance as well.
Yeah.
So now we're going on to DVD. Now, bear in mind, as I say, you only get an hour a day electric. So if you watch a film, you may have to watch it in two halves. So what would be your DVD of a film or TV series or even music? What would yours be, Diane?
I really thought way too hard about this. I just kept, and I haven't changed my mind from the first thought, and I've gone through and thought, well, no, Dirty Dancing, gotta be. Because, you know, you've got to be cheered up and you've got to enjoy, and Dirty Dancing, if I'm on an island with just Katie, we can just dance, and that's just going to lift the spirits, and you're all going to have such fun and dance. And the music in that, see, I'm cheating a bit because I've used the music thing again. Because
it's fine.
Not a massive TV buff. So I'm quite happy to do without TV. I'd rather read a book and have music on and things like that. If there's a great film, I'll watch a great film. But Dirty Dancing, classic.
And it's one of them where you don't want to go to on a remote island and be deserted listening to, something boring. You want something uplifting and that'll make you have a little dance through the island, don't you? So, that's great.
Watching something like it, do you?
Or Castaway with Tom Hanks.
On the rock, that's it. So what's yours, Katie? Your DVD?
It was going to be Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash biopic, because I absolutely love that film. Yeah. But then you said TV series, and I was like, I have to take Grey's Anatomy. I'm obsessed with Grey's Anatomy. I love it. I think I could be a qualified surgeon now after watching it so much.
So you're going to take your series of Grey's Anatomy? Because
then at least I think they're about an hour long each. So if we wanted a break from Dirty Dancing and you wanted to watch a series of Grey's Anatomy, we were all right for a few years then.
Oh, that's great. Love these choices. So now the next thing is something that people always struggle with because there's that many choices. I know I would struggle making a choice. Food. Which food or meal would you take with you? So what about you, Diane?
I didn't find it that much of a struggle, actually. I think logically. So I thought, what could I actually tolerate continually? Because I love spicy foods, and I love, chicken tandoori. Actually, I've got to do a lamb tandoori tomorrow. So things like that. And I'm a big foodie, so I love eating. But I didn't find it too hard, because something that I have eaten cold for breakfast, fine. It would be lasagna and salad.
Yeah. Can't beat a good
Lasagna
old
as well.
lasagna.
We'll pick something else, otherwise we're going to be stuck.
Like pick a pudding.
Yes.
Something chocolatey.
So you
with
both
chocolate
pick
in it.
lasagna, but it's one of those comfort foods, isn't it? That no matter if it's winter, summer, whenever,
Yeah.
you'll sit and eat lasagna.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I never order when we go to a restaurant, because I make it better. I'm just boasting there. And my sister makes it better. And I'm just like, no, I'll be disappointed. So I never order it when I go out. And my daughters have ordered it a couple of times and gone, not as good as yours. Lasagna, it would have to be, Katie.
Yeah, so lasagna.
Because we've got to have the salady bit to go with it,
Yeah.
to give it,
Definitely. So what are you going to take for dessert, Katie?
I don't know now. What do you like, Diane? Do you like chocolate?
Oh yes, I do a wicked chocolate cake, actually. But because I've got my own chickens, I also do the most fabulous meringues. When you've got excess of, eggs, from time to time, not all the time. Sometimes they're a little greedy and keep them to themselves, but meringue, eaten mess. Because it's got all the fruit, which is really healthy, and the sugar, which is not so healthy.
Yeah.
Lemon
meringue pie. I'm going to choose.
Eating mess and lasagna. What a mixture there. You'll be sleeping that off afterwards, won't you?
Have a break. Dirty dancing, and then have them.
Yeah. So now we're on to our last item that you get to choose, your luxury item. What's it going to be, Diane?
Katie said she struggled with this. This one was an absolute slam dunk for me. I wouldn't go anywhere without my Estee Lauder moisturizer.
I thought you were going to say your dog.
Oh, my dog is
It's a luxury item.
I'll tell you what, we're joined at the hip. The three of us, the two dogs and me, joined at the hip at the moment. Honestly, I had to pop out to the post office the other day, and when I got back, they looked at me like I deserted them. I was out for 5 minutes. I just had to go to the post box and throw the post in and come back. And normally I would take them because it's just in the village down the road, but actually I had 6 because I was posting all the signed books out to people, and it was quite heavy. So I thought, no, I'll just pop in the car. Oh my goodness. I had Bo looking through the cat flap at me as I walked into the back garden, and he's like, where have you been, Mum?
I think that's going to be a big thing, when people, because of lockdown, and when people start going back to work, pets are going to be like, where's everybody gone? It's going to be stressful time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm lucky because obviously what I do is I'm home based anyway. Hubby's home based, luckily, as well. But we still go out. We normally leave them for a little while each day, but no, they haven't been left alone in a year.
So what's it going to be then? The dog or the Estee Lauder?
Oh, well, it's going to be the dog, hasn't it?
A last minute change there, yeah. Good decision.
One without the other.
Yeah. Great. What about you, Katie? What's your luxury item going to be?
Now we can bring pets. Probably bring the cat. And your dog's all right with cats.
They're great with
Isn't
cats.
she?
Yeah.
So yeah. I was going to say sun cream because I'm so pale that if we were going to a sunny island, I'd just be in pain all the time.
You're going to Cumbria?
No, we'll take the cat.
Snow, you could get a snow or gales. It's not an exotic island. It's it's exotic in its own right, but it's in Cumbria, so
you might get sun.
That's actually why I chose my Estee Lauder moisturizer, because obviously you can use it at night, moisturize, you keep you lovely and young. During the day, it's got some protection factor, and I thought, I'm having that.
Good choices. Good choices. Well, you both come up with some great choices tonight, and I can't believe that we've been going an hour and a half nearly. Which is great. So just before we finish, perhaps you can, Diane, just give us a brief overview again of your books, where people can get them, and where they can find you on the internet.
Right, DianeSaxon.com is my website. I'm on Facebook as Diane Saxon Author, and Twitter as the same, and I'm also on Instagram. Don't know what I'm on Instagram as, because youngest daughter set it up and I just play with it. And at the moment I've got 3 books out in the series, the DS Jenna Morgan series, and book 4 is out on the 2nd of March. And I do have paperbacks. I've got a brand new load of paperbacks due any day now, which is very exciting because it's all the X, but I've also had to order the other 3 books as well because people are asking for the whole sets now, which is fantastic news. So all 4 of those books available from the 2nd of March onwards. They're in all formats across the board. They are available on Amazon. You can still order them from places like Waterstones, but obviously you can't go into Waterstones. You can get them from the libraries. If they're not in the library, you can request them and they will order them in. And that also includes all the audio. So if you don't want to buy the whole audio, you can actually request it from your local library. The libraries are fantastic. I'm going to be doing a library chat the day after the book's released as well. So I'm doing I think it's a Zoom. And that's a ticketed event through Eventbrite, and that's with my local library. But all the libraries support these books as well. So and then, as I say, later this year I shall be starting to release my books that were published previously, which unfortunately the publisher closed their doors. So I got all my rights back.
And I believe there's a bit of an issue with Amazon at the minute, isn't there, for the X on the paperback, about the pricing or something?
Well, what's happened is it's gone up as a pre-order, but if you click on it and look, it's that book that's a little bit pricey. It's actually the large print. So don't be buying the large print if you don't that price. That is the large print specifically. That's the one that normally goes into the libraries, because libraries do like their large print, obviously. But the normal paperback, if you like, will be available from the 2nd of March.
Great. And I believe I don't know if all of them, but some of your books are on Amazon. Is it Amazon Unlimited? They're all on,
they're all on Unlimited, yeah.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. Everyone knows where they can go out and buy the books now, and everyone will be waiting for the beginning of March. Katie, have you got anything in the pipeline? Will we ever see a book from you?
I don't know. I'd love the thought of writing one, but I love reading them. I think I'd like to be a professional reader, wasn't it?
Sounds good. A professional reader. That does sound good. Yeah.
Dream job.
And you say you run a blog. Do you want to just tell everybody what your blog site is?
So it's I'm on Facebook at the moment. The blog's not live yet, so I'm just writing that. But it's Facebook. The page is called Katey's Pages, so it's a bit of a play on my name.
That's great.
But yeah.
So that's Katey, is it?
Katey, Katey's Pages.
Yeah. Super. And that is on Facebook.
Yeah.
Great. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, great. Well, thank you both for attending. I hope you have a great time on the island.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Jo.
And look forward to the 2nd of March when the book comes out, and I will be getting to read it beforehand. Thank you very much, ladies, and we'll speak to you again soon. Bye.
Have a nice.
Bye.